everybody. For my institution, I chose the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Um, the stated mission of the institution is protect the American people and uphold the Constitution of the United States, so staying ahead of national security threats to the homeland. The motto is fidelity, bravery, and integrity. So more specifically, the FBI is an intelligence-driven and threat-focused national security organization with both intelligence and law enforcement responsibilities. It is the leading investigative arm of the U.S. Department of Justice and a full member of the U.S. intelligence community. So essentially, they gather, share, and analyze intelligence with the purpose of supporting their own investigations as well as the FBI's partners. This aids in comprehension of and taking action against security threats aimed at the United States. Under authority and duty, the FBI is assigned and expected to investigate specific crimes and provide other law enforcement agencies with cooperative services. What evidence is there that they achieve their stated mission? So they do this in many ways. This includes implementation and participation of specific programs, outreach and otherwise, through research, task forces, investigations, counterintelligence activities, and more. So some examples: they locate and apprehend fugitives who have violated specific federal laws, identify, disrupt, and dismantle criminal enterprises, gather, analyze, and assess information and intelligence of planned criminal acts, conduct personnel investigations, law enforcement training, provide assistance to state and law enforcement personnel. They focus on interagency law enforcement initiatives, federal, state, local agencies, develop state, local, and international law enforcement training programs. They provide timely and relevant criminal justice information and identification services that help others like law enforcement, criminal justice, civilian, academic, employment, licensing, and firearms sales organizations. The FBI labs are freely available for assistance, like expert testimony in federal and local courts, law enforcement agencies, other organizational units of the Department of Justice, and federal agencies. And then also in mass disasters and other humanitarian purposes, they give identification help. They accomplish these things. They have 7 programs: applicant matters, civil rights, counterterrorism, foreign counterintelligence, organized crime and drugs, violent crimes and major offenders, and financial crime. They also develop new tactics for information gathering and analysis. They have state-of-the-art training where they do classroom work. They do simulated field work, and then skill development, which we're all kind of work together. Partisan groups influence the FBI. So I found a survey. It was done in 2018, but I thought it was interesting because that was when Trump was coming up. They tend to kind of flip-flop in their views on the FBI. So then the majorities in both parties viewed the FBI favorably, but there's a partisan gap. So then it was 74% of Democrats had positive views and Republicans 66%. And then I found a couple articles. So one of them described it as the FBI is seeking to apply values, assumptions, and interpretations representing a fairly broad range of the American political spectrum, from the rational evidence-based left to the rational evidence-based right. Moreover, we do not trade in subtleties or fine points or take positions on the kinds of issues that divide well-informed, serious participants in policy debate. So I understood this as there are instances of corruption within the agency which could benefit one party over the other. The FBI claims that ideally they strive to leave room for differences between parties and remain more impartial, but they also address them honestly and intelligently and ensure there is not an appearance that politics plays any part in the department's day-to-day operations. Federal employees are also given guidelines that delineate what activities are permitted and prohibited in regards to political activity. So the Hatch Act, for example, all Department of Justice employees are subject to the Hatch Act, which generally prohibits department employees from engaging in partisan political activity while on duty in a federal facility or using federal property. Political activity is activity directed toward the success or failure of a political party candidate for partisan political office or partisan political group. The statute carries serious penalties, including removal from federal employment. And I also thought it was worth noting that the FBI does have a corruption hotline. The FBI seeks to shape or influence society. They have a Citizens Academy, which is a 6 to 8 week program that gives insights into the inner workings of the FBI to business, religious, civic, and community leaders. The focus of this program is to facilitate a dialogue between the community and agency so their role is more thoroughly explained and understood. They also have community awareness program presentations, CAP program, that work with a certain community group that promotes exploring concerning topics important to their group or organization for the FBI to discuss, a multicultural engagement council, which helps the FBI better understand the cultures and committees they represent, so ethnic, religious, minority leaders. This is similar to CAP in how they collaborate and work to establish a trusting environment where participants feel safe and heard, and all involved work toward identifying solutions and building strong relationships. There's also teen youth academies for middle and high schoolers, adopt-a-school programs for mentoring and tutoring children, a junior special agents program for elementary students, I think before you post online program, child ID app for parents, Chasing the Dragon, which is focused on opioid and addiction, and then an FBI SOS Safe Online Surfing Internet Challenge. The societal consequences of the institution's actions. In some ways, the FBI affects society negatively and others positively, but since it is a federal institution, it does hold a great deal of power over the people. If they decide to enforce a law or amend an existing one, depending on what that is, or if on the other side of this, if they decide to stop supporting civil rights, this could wreak havoc on society since there would no longer be structure or consequences for certain actions. We could end up being on extreme, a lawless society, which would be really obviously extremely detrimental to all of us. If they stop upholding the Constitution and giving us protection, we're all in danger. On the positive side, what they are already doing with their programs, education, outreach, etc., is a huge help to all of us as they provide other agencies in solving crimes and giving support. The institution responds to citizens. So annually, the FBI is active in hundreds of civil rights cases, investigating hate crimes, color of law violations, and freedom of access to clinical entrances. Act violations, FACE is what it's called. This means it is a federal crime to deprive or conspire to deprive a person of a right protected by the Constitution or U.S. law, which includes government officials and off-duty conduct like excessive force, sexual assault, false arrest, obstruction of justice, deprivation of medical care, and failure to keep from harm. General policies and practices, their priorities are protect the U.S. from terrorist attacks against foreign intelligence, espionage, and cyber operations, and then protecting civil rights. They combat significant cyber criminal activity, public corruption at all levels, transnational criminal enterprises, white-collar crime, and violent crime, set forth principles for safeguarding, collect, analyze, produce, and disseminate foreign intelligence and counterintelligence to support national and departmental missions in accordance with procedural guidelines approved by the Attorney General after consultation with the Director. Their core values are respect, integrity, accountability, leadership, diversity, compassion, fairness, rigorous obedience to the institution. Who benefits? I believe we all benefit from the FBI as far as national security is concerned. We get protection from cyber attacks, counterintelligence, and economic espionage, terrorist fraud. They help with civil rights violations, financial crimes like embezzlement, medical fraud, mortgage fraud, etc. They help with organized crime, political corruption, and fighting white-collar and violent crimes, as I mentioned, counterintelligence, and more. Other federal agencies like the Department of Justice, law enforcement agencies, investigative agencies, and state and county prosecutors' offices share databases and resources to help solve crimes and prevent them. So they all work together and keep all the information available. This institution, the FBI, aligns or not with my personal sensibilities. So I have positive and negatives with this one. As far as I have respect for the protection they give to us. And then, of course, I appreciate feeling safe. I also enjoyed and appreciated learning about what they do for communities and their commitment to being involved, especially with the younger generation. I think that's really important. But like other government agencies, I lack a little trust in areas and disagree with some of their practices. I don't feel they're are open with us about how much they're surveilling us and use technology to keep track of and control us. So, like for an example, with there's a NSL National Security Letter where they're allowed to obtain an array of private records on U.S. persons, often from third parties, such as banking statements, phone records, credit reports, and so on, without the requirement of a court order. This does not require any judicial approval, nor was it supervised, and they were able to obtain whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, which I understand this to be a necessary evil to some extent for our safety, but there are definitely some practices and justifications for these in the name of national security that breach a lot of moral and ethical grounds. So this is just something to consider as they are protecting our rights, but they're also violating them, essentially. So that's kind of hard to reconcile the two. So I'll post this so you can read it if you like. I know the videos are kind of hard to get through, but thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing everybody else's. Thanks.